Ladies and gentlemen, today we explore a subject that holds the key to not only personal transformation, but to unshakable influence. The making of a mind so strong that it commands respect, creates certainty, and yes, even intimidates by its clarity and conviction. A weak mind is scattered. A strong mind is focused. The first step in building a powerful mental foundation is identifying a definite chief aim, a clear and precise vision of what you are pursuing. Vagueness is the enemy of mental strength. Know what you want, why you want it, and what you're willing to sacrifice to get it. The foundation of a mind so strong it terrifies people begins with having a definite purpose. This is not merely a goal or a vague ambition. It is a deep, unwavering understanding of what you are here to do and why it matters. Definite purpose gives your thoughts direction, your actions meaning, and your persistence fuel. Without it, the mind becomes scattered, reactive, and vulnerable to distraction and self-doubt. With it, you become a force of nature, calm, focused, and resilient in the face of adversity. Most people wander through life with only a hazy idea of what they want. They chase trends, respond to pressures, or pursue dreams they inherited from others. But a strong mind is never vague. It begins with clarity, and that clarity comes from deliberate self-examination. You must look inward and ask, what do I value? What am I passionate about? What contribution do I want to make? When you find a purpose that resonates deeply, it acts like a mental compass, giving every decision a reference point. You no longer need to second, guess, or seek constant approval. You know your mission, and that mission becomes the backbone of your thoughts and actions. A definite purpose doesn't have to be something massive or publicly recognized. It simply has to be clear and compelling to you. It could be building a business, becoming a master in a specific craft, raising a family with intention, or changing your community. What matters is that it calls you to action consistently and compels you to push past resistance. Purpose fuels motivation, but more importantly, it sustains discipline. In moments of weakness or fatigue, your reason why reminds you that the effort is worth it. Clarity of purpose also brings simplicity. When you know what you're striving for, distractions lose their power. You stop entertaining options that don't align with your mission. You say no more easily, not because you're rigid, but because your vision matters more than temporary pleasures or meaningless obligations. This kind of decisiveness, when practiced consistently, sharpens your mind. It removes mental clutter and replaces it with intention. A powerful mind is not necessarily one that thinks more. It's one that thinks better, and that begins with knowing where to focus. Furthermore, having a definite purpose redefines failure. Without purpose, failure is discouraging and often feels like a dead end. But with a clear goal, failure becomes feedback. It becomes part of the process, not a reason to quit. You begin to see setbacks as stepping stones rather than roadblocks. Each challenge is reinterpreted as a lesson because you know what you're moving toward. The mind becomes more adaptable, more resilient, and more determined when anchored in something bigger than momentary discomfort. People with definite purpose often exhibit a quiet intensity. They don't need to prove themselves constantly because their direction speaks louder than their words. They may not always be the loudest in the room, but their presence is felt. Others notice their decisiveness, their consistency, and their refusal to be shaken by circumstances. This can be intimidating, not because they intend to intimidate, but because most people are not used to that level of certainty. A strong mind doesn't need external validation because it is already aligned internally. There is also a psychological shift that happens when you commit fully to a purpose. You begin to attract opportunities, people, and ideas that align with your vision. This is not magical thinking, it's a byproduct of focus. When your mind is committed to a single path, it becomes hyper, aware of anything that might support that path. you recognize patterns faster, make decisions more effectively, and build momentum where others stall. This sense of alignment, of being on the right path, generates a kind of confidence that cannot be faked or borrowed. It's earned and it radiates outward. Lastly, a definite purpose brings emotional stability. When you know what matters most, you're less swayed by temporary emotions or the opinions of others. You become grounded, centered, and self-assured. This emotional control adds to the strength of your mind. You are no longer at the mercy of every high and low. Instead, you operate from a place of consistent intention. Others may find this intimidating because it contrasts with the emotional volatility that defines most people's mental state. To build a mind so strong it terrifies people, the journey begins with finding and committing to your definite purpose. It's not optional, it's essential. Without it, you're easily derailed. With it, you become relentless. Your thoughts gain structure, your emotions gain balance, and your actions gain unstoppable force. Purpose doesn't just guide you, it transforms you. And in a world full of noise and confusion, a person who knows exactly what they want and why becomes a beacon of strength and clarity. Control of thoughts is the cornerstone of mental strength. When you learn to take charge of what goes on in your mind, you gain the ability to shape your reality, your outcomes, and your influence on the world around you. Thoughts are not just passive experiences floating through your mind. They are powerful forces that direct your focus, generate your emotions, and determine your actions. A mind that is undisciplined is easily hijacked by fear, negativity, and distraction, but a mind that is trained to think intentionally becomes a weapon, calm, precise, and capable of creating success under any circumstance. Most people underestimate the power of thought. They assume their thoughts just happen and that they have little control over them. This is a dangerous misconception. Every thought you entertain either strengthens or weakens your mental state. If your mind is constantly flooded with worry, envy, regret, or insecurity, you will feel depleted. You will hesitate, avoid challenges, and ultimately act in ways that sabotage your progress. But when you develop the habit of monitoring your thoughts and deliberately choosing what to think, you take control of your internal world, and by extension, your external results. This kind of control doesn't happen overnight. It begins with awareness. You must start observing your thinking patterns. What do you tell yourself when you fail? How do you think when you're uncertain or under pressure? What kind of mental stories do you replay about yourself and your future? Many people run destructive scripts in their minds every day without realizing it. They say things like, "I'm not good enough," "I always mess things up," or "things never work out for me." These are not just harmless thoughts. They are self-fulfilling prophecies. When repeated often enough, they become beliefs, and beliefs determine behavior. To reverse this, you need to actively reprogram your mind. Begin replacing disempowering thoughts with ones that align with strength, growth, and resilience. For example, instead of thinking, "I can't do this," train yourself to think, "I'll find a way." Instead of, "This is too hard," say, "I'm getting stronger every time I try." This is not about blind optimism or ignoring reality. It's about choosing thoughts that move you forward rather than keep you stuck. Mental strength is not the absence of negative thoughts. It's the ability to override them with intentional thinking. This discipline of thought also extends to what you allow into your mental environment. What you read, watch, and listen to influences your thinking more than you might realize. If you constantly consume content that is negative, shallow, or filled with conflict, your mind will mirror those inputs. But if you surround yourself with empowering ideas, uplifting perspectives, and challenging insights, your thinking will rise to match that level. You must become the gatekeeper of your mind, filtering out what doesn't serve your growth and letting in only what sharpens your focus and uplifts your spirit. When you gain control of your thoughts, you gain control of your emotions. This is a vital skill for building a strong mind. Emotions are not random. They are triggered by your interpretation of events, and your interpretations are shaped by your thoughts. If you think you're being attacked, you'll feel anger or fear. If you think you're growing, you'll feel motivated. When you learn to shift the way you think about challenges, seeing them as opportunities instead of threats, you also shift your emotional state. This emotional regulation is a powerful sign of inner strength, and others sense it. They may not know why you seem so composed under pressure, but they feel the weight of your presence. There is also a strategic benefit to thought control. It improves your ability to focus. In a world filled with distractions, the ability to sustain attention on what matters is a rare and powerful trait. A strong mind is not constantly pulled in 10 directions. It knows how to filter noise and stay aligned with its goals. This mental discipline increases your productivity, deepens your learning, and enhances your creativity. When your thoughts are focused, your energy is focused, and focused energy creates momentum. Perhaps most importantly, thought control builds confidence. When you know that your inner world is stable, no external chaos can shake you. You trust yourself. You stop needing reassurance because your thoughts already reinforce your capability. This confidence isn't loud or arrogant. It's quiet and unshakable. People notice it. They may not understand it, but they respect it. And sometimes they fear it, because a person who fully controls their own mind cannot be manipulated, distracted, or defeated easily. In the end, controlling your thoughts is not about perfection. It's about mastery through practice. You will still experience doubt and fear, but you won't let them run your life. You will still face challenges, but you will face them with a mind trained to respond rather than react. That is the mark of mental strength. And when you cultivate that strength, you become someone who stands out, someone others admire, depend on, or even fear, because they sense that your mind is your domain, and nothing enters it without your permission. Persistence is the quiet engine behind every strong mind. It is the trait that transforms good intentions into real outcomes, and fleeting motivation into long-term achievement. Without persistence, even the most brilliant ideas and clearest visions fall apart when tested by adversity. Mental strength is not defined by how confident you are at the beginning of a journey. It is measured by how determined you remain when that journey becomes difficult, uncertain, or painful. Persistence is the habit of continuing even when progress is slow, support is lacking, or success seems far away. It is the mental decision to press on, not just once, but over and over again until the goal is reached. The reason persistence is such a powerful builder of mental strength is because it trains the mind to view obstacles differently. While many people see difficulty as a sign to retreat, those who are persistent learn to see it as part of the process. They don't interpret problems as personal failures, but rather as tests of character and opportunities for growth. This shift in perspective rewires the brain to tolerate discomfort and uncertainty, two conditions that often derail the average person. A persistent mind expects resistance and prepares for it. It does not panic in the face of challenge because it has accepted that struggle is not an interruption. It is the path itself. Most people give up too soon. They underestimate the time, effort, and resilience required to achieve anything meaningful. They try for a short period, meet resistance, and conclude that success is not meant for them. But a mentally strong person understands that real achievement is not immediate. It is the result of staying in the game longer than others. It is outlasting the phase where most people quit. This doesn't mean mindlessly pushing forward in the wrong direction. It means adjusting strategy when necessary, but never abandoning the goal. That kind of persistence builds self-trust because every time you push through difficulty, you prove to yourself that you are someone who follows through. That self Trust becomes mental armor. Persistence also deepens focus. When you commit to staying the course despite delays or failures, your mind stops looking for quick exits or easier options. It becomes centered. The scattered energy that normally comes from switching goals or chasing new trends is replaced by deep concentration on the task at hand. This depth allows for greater learning, sharper skill development, and more creative problem solving. As you persist, you begin to master your craft not just by time spent, but by the intensity of your attention. This level of mental involvement creates outcomes that others cannot replicate with surface-level effort. There is also an emotional dimension to persistence. It requires you to manage frustration, disappointment, and doubt without letting them dictate your decisions. This emotional regulation is a hallmark of strong minds. When you persist, you practice separating feelings from actions. You may feel tired, discouraged, or overwhelmed, but you continue. In doing so, you teach your mind that discomfort is not a command to stop. It is a signal to push harder, refine your strategy, or take a breath before moving forward again. Over time, this emotional resilience becomes automatic. You no longer fear pressure or failure because you've trained your mind to respond with persistence rather than retreat. The effects of persistent effort also compound. Small actions, repeated over time, produce results that far exceed the sum of their parts. A strong mind understands the power of this compounding and is patient enough to wait for it. It doesn't seek shortcuts or dramatic overnight success. Instead, it finds strength in consistency. A little progress each day becomes exponential progress over time. This is something most people never experience because they quit before the compounding effect can take hold. The persistent mind sees every effort as a deposit into a long-term account of success, and it trusts that the return will come. Persistence can also set you apart in ways that are intimidating to others. When you refuse to quit where others have stopped, you challenge their assumptions about what is possible. Your tenacity exposes their excuses. It shows that endurance, not luck or talent, is often the real difference maker. This silent comparison can make others uncomfortable, not because you are trying to make them feel small, but because your determination reveals their limits. That is the quiet power of persistence. It doesn't just move you forward. It redefines what's achievable for everyone watching. Ultimately, persistence is not about gritting your teeth and forcing progress blindly. It's about committing fully and choosing to continue, intelligently and consistently, no matter the difficulty. It is the daily decision to align your actions with your goal, even when the results are not immediate. It is the habit of moving forward, imperfectly perhaps, but relentlessly. A mind trained in persistence is unshakable. It cannot be broken by failure, fear, or fatigue. It bends, but it does not break. And that kind of mind, disciplined, focused, and determined, creates outcomes that seem almost inevitable. It is not the loudest or flashiest strength, but it is the most enduring. It is the quiet fire that turns dreams into reality. Discipline is the structure that holds mental strength together. Without discipline, even the most inspiring purpose, the strongest belief, and the deepest persistence can collapse under pressure. Discipline is the daily practice of doing what needs to be done, regardless of how you feel in the moment. It is consistency over intensity. It's not glamorous, and it doesn't always feel good. But it is the invisible force that separates those who merely dream from those who actually build. A disciplined mind is feared because it cannot be swayed by emotions, excuses, or external noise. It follows through again and again until the job is done. The essence of discipline lies in control over behavior, habits, time, and energy. Most people live in reaction. They wait to feel motivated before taking action. They get pulled off course by distractions, temptations, and short-term comfort. but a disciplined person acts regardless of temporary feelings. They decide in advance what must be done and then do it, even when it's uncomfortable, inconvenient, or boring. This control creates power. It builds trust in oneself. When you keep promises to yourself day after day, your self-respect grows. That internal respect fuels further discipline, creating a loop of rising performance and confidence. Discipline trains your mind to respect boundaries. You begin to protect your time, your attention, and your energy. You say no to what doesn't serve your long-term goal, not out of rigidity, but out of clarity. Others may find this intimidating because they are used to compromising, procrastinating, and indulging distractions. When they see someone who operates with precision and restraint, it challenges their norm. Your presence becomes a silent reminder of the standard they are avoiding. This contrast can create tension, not because you are trying to judge others, but because your commitment reflects back their inconsistency. A disciplined mind is built one decision at a time. It's not created overnight or through a single act of willpower. It grows through repetition, getting up early when you don't feel like it, completing the hard task instead of scrolling your phone, choosing the long-term payoff over the short-term pleasure. These decisions compound. They form a mental identity. You become someone who follows through, and that identity becomes a mental fortress. You don't need to hype yourself up or rely on motivation because discipline has already created momentum. You trust yourself to act, and that trust makes you reliable, focused, and resilient under pressure. One of the overlooked aspects of discipline is its connection to freedom. People often think discipline is about restriction, but in reality, it creates liberation. When your mind is trained to stay on track, you gain freedom from chaos, overwhelm, and regret. You don't waste time battling with indecision or recovering from avoidable mistakes. You create space, mental and physical, to focus on what matters. That sense of internal order, of being in command of your life, produces peace. And peace, rooted in order, is more powerful than any burst of motivation or inspiration. Discipline also sharpens your decision-making. When you are disciplined, your actions are based on values and principles, not mood or pressure. You don't get pulled into impulsive reactions or emotional spirals. You become deliberate. This deliberateness strengthens your mind by teaching it patience, strategy, and control. While others are driven by stress, urgency, or ego, you act from a centered place. That stillness in the middle of noise gives you an edge. You think clearly, act decisively, and stay grounded. That calm under pressure makes others take notice, and sometimes it makes them uncomfortable. People fear what they don't understand, and a person who is entirely in control of themselves is both rare and powerful. Maintaining discipline over time also forces you to level up. You can't stay disciplined while holding on to weak habits, poor routines, or toxic influences. Discipline demands refinement. It pushes you to upgrade your environment, your associations, and your standards. This constant elevation means that the disciplined mind doesn't just survive, it grows. It evolves, it becomes more efficient, more strategic, and more effective with every cycle of discipline. Over time, this self-driven evolution creates results that seem extraordinary to others, even though to you, they are just the byproduct of showing up consistently. Ultimately, discipline is not just about achieving goals. It's about becoming the kind of person who can be trusted with responsibility, pressure, and power. A disciplined mind does not flinch under hardship. It doesn't need outside validation to keep going. It doesn't crumble when results are delayed. It is forged through sacrifice, strengthened by repetition, and protected by focus. Others will see this and react, some with respect, others with envy or fear, because the presence of discipline reveals what is possible when excuses are removed. It is not loud, it is not showy, but it is unstoppable. And when you become unstoppable in your habits, your results, and your focus, your mind becomes a force others can't ignore. and sometimes can't handle. Emotional resilience is the ability to face life's stressors, pressures, and pain without breaking internally. It's not about being cold, numb, or suppressing feelings. It's about being strong enough to feel deeply and still choose your actions consciously. A strong mind is not one that avoids emotion, but one that manages it intelligently. This capacity to stay composed, thoughtful, and focused even in the middle of emotional storms is what sets mentally powerful individuals apart from the rest. Emotional resilience is not innate, it is trained. It is built by intentionally confronting discomfort, learning from pain, and refusing to let temporary emotional turbulence control long-term decisions. At its core, emotional resilience starts with awareness. You must become skilled at recognizing what you're feeling and why. Many people operate on autopilot, reacting to anger, fear, or disappointment without understanding what triggered them or where those feelings are coming from. A strong mind does the opposite. It pauses, it observes, it understands that emotions are information, not commands. They signal something about your environment, your expectations, or your values. But just because a feeling arises doesn't mean it needs to be obeyed. Emotional resilience gives you space between stimulus and response. In that space, you gain control. When you have emotional resilience, you stop being easily provoked. Criticism doesn't destabilize you. Rejection doesn't define you. Failure doesn't crush you. You may still feel hurt, angry, or discouraged, but you don't let those feelings drive impulsive actions. You become selective with your energy. You stop reacting to every minor frustration and instead reserve your mental and emotional bandwidth for what truly matters. This selective reaction is incredibly powerful. People around you will notice that you're not easily shaken, and that quiet control often feels intimidating, not because you're being aggressive, but because others are not used to that level of self-mastery. Another part of emotional resilience is learning how to sit with pain without immediately trying to escape it. Most people distract themselves when they feel discomfort. They look for quick fixes, food, entertainment, attention, avoidance, just to avoid sitting with difficult emotions. But this habit weakens the mind. It teaches you to run instead of face. A strong mind, in contrast, leans into discomfort. It doesn't rush to cover the wound. It examines it, understands it, and allows it to heal with intention. This process is uncomfortable, but it builds strength. You become someone who does not need to escape feelings. You process them, learn from them, and rise above them. Resilience is also about emotional regulation. It's knowing how to calm yourself when your emotions surge and how to reframe your mindset when you're spiraling into negativity. It's about having tools, breathing, journaling, mental reframing, perspective shifts that keep your emotions in balance. Over time, this self-regulation becomes a mental reflex. You begin to recover faster from emotional lows. What used to shake you for days now passes in minutes or hours. This quick recovery makes you more efficient, more focused, and more reliable in high-pressure environments. What makes emotional resilience so impactful, and at times fearsome to others, is that it gives you an edge in chaos. While others panic, spiral, or lash out, you remain composed. Your decisions stay logical. Your demeanor remains calm. That kind of control is rare. It signals authority, not because you demand it, but because people instinctively trust those who can remain steady when things get unstable. And in a world full of emotional volatility, calmness becomes a superpower. A resilient mind is not just respected, it is often followed. Emotional resilience also protects you from manipulation. Many people are controlled by guilt, shame, fear, or praise. They make choices not based on principle, but on how others might feel. A strong mind, however, is grounded. It listens but does not get swayed by every emotional current. You can empathize without compromising your values. You can hear hard truths without becoming defensive. You can be compassionate without becoming a doormat. This balance of strength and softness creates a unique presence, firm but fair, open but unshakable. Over time, emotional resilience becomes one of the defining traits of a powerful mind. It gives you endurance in long-term pursuits. It protects your clarity when others are confused. It shields your peace from drama and chaos. It allows you to keep showing up, even when life tries to push you down, and it builds the kind of quiet confidence that others can't quite explain. But they feel it. Some admire it. Others may resent it. But few can deny it. In the end, emotional resilience is not about perfection. It's about remaining centered through life's storms. It's about choosing your response rather than being a slave to your reactions. It's about being emotionally honest without being emotionally reckless. When your mind reaches this level of strength, you stop being easily broken. You don't avoid pain, you transform it. And that ability to walk through fire without losing your center is what truly makes a mind terrifying to those who rely on emotional chaos to gain control. A powerful mind thrives in solitude. It does not require the constant presence of others to feel whole, validated, or certain. Solitude is not isolation. It is intentional separation from noise, distraction, and influence so that the mind can think clearly, reconnect with purpose, and refine its internal compass. Those who fear solitude often fear themselves. They depend on external stimulation to avoid confronting their thoughts, their doubts, and their insecurities. But the strong mind uses solitude as a tool. It enters the quiet not to escape the world, but to better understand it and itself. And in a society addicted to attention and noise, the ability to stand alone can be not just rare, but deeply intimidating. The mind becomes sharp in stillness. When you're alone, you're forced to face your own thoughts without the filter of social expectations or distractions. It's in these moments that you begin to understand what you truly think and feel, beyond what others have told you to believe. Most people borrow their identity from the world around them. Their values, desires, and opinions are a collage of what they've absorbed from peers, media, and culture. But solitude cuts through that. It allows you to hear your own voice, and when you become deeply familiar with your own inner voice, you no longer need to seek approval, permission, or direction from others. Solitude strengthens decision-making. When you're constantly surrounded by people, opinions, and pressure, it's easy to make choices based on fear of judgment or desire for acceptance. But when you learn to make decisions alone, based on reason and principle, you build self-reliance. You don't need consensus to act. You don't stall out waiting for validation. This self-directed action is powerful. It makes you efficient, clear, and confident. And when people see you act with that kind of independence, it can be unsettling. Not because you're arrogant, but because you're ungoverned by the need to conform. Another reason solitude builds mental strength is that it creates space for reflection and correction. In solitude, you can study your own behavior, your wins, your mistakes, your patterns. You can look at your life without the distortions of ego or performance. You gain objectivity. That self-honesty sharpens you. It allows for real growth, not performative change. And when you repeatedly take time to correct yourself, not because someone told you to, but because you hold yourself to a high standard, you become someone others can't easily manipulate or deceive. Your sense of direction becomes internal. You become self-regulating. Solitude also builds creative power. Some of the greatest ideas, insights, and breakthroughs emerge when the mind has space to breathe. Constant noise stifles originality, but silence opens the door to new connections, deeper thinking, and creative insight. A strong mind embraces this. It doesn't chase constant activity. It values depth over distraction. And in doing so, it becomes a source of clarity for others who are lost in mental clutter. That clarity, forged in solitude, is what gives your thoughts and words unusual weight. People listen differently when they sense that your insight wasn't borrowed, it was earned in silence. Solitude is also a test of emotional independence. Many rely on others for constant emotional regulation, needing to be reassured, entertained, or distracted. But a mentally strong individual can sit in emotional discomfort without external rescue. They are not cold or detached. They are self-contained. They've built the ability to process, regulate, and stabilize their inner world without needing someone else to do it for them. This creates a kind of internal peace that others often envy but don't understand. It's the calm of knowing that you can face whatever you need to, on your own if necessary. The ability to stand alone also creates a rare kind of influence. People are drawn to those who don't need them. There's strength in someone who can walk alone and still walk with confidence. That independence commands respect. It suggests you've faced yourself and survived, and in a world full of people running from solitude, that level of self-confrontation is intimidating. It means you know who you are. It means your actions come from a place of clarity, not confusion, and it means you can't be easily controlled or swayed. Finally, solitude is where you test your conviction. It's easy to believe in your values when you're surrounded by agreement, but can you believe the same thing in silence? Can you follow your purpose without applause? Can you keep showing up when no one is watching? If you can, then your strength is real. Solitude reveals whether your principles are rooted or just rehearsed. It reveals whether your goals are driven by vision or by vanity. A strong mind doesn't just visit solitude, it relies on it. In the end, the ability to walk alone isn't about rejecting others. It's about not needing them to remain whole. It's about leading your own mind rather than being led. And when someone possesses that quiet, grounded independence, it often confuses or intimidates those who have never learned to be alone. But that's the mark of a powerful mind. It doesn't demand attention. It earns reverence through stillness, depth, and the unshakable confidence that comes only from time spent in silence, sharpening itself,